Oh. Hey, Topanga. All right, I was trying to finagle some stuff since I've been having people have been telling me that I've been going out. I still haven't figured out my 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 freaking internet connection, why it's so spotty lately, but I might have to have somebody, but I watched a couple of them. I saw the spotty stuff, so I'm still able to get the majority of what I want to say out in a way that you can hear me. You just have to, survive through sometimes freezes in the recording. And hey, Topanga and Carlotta and everybody else that's on. So anyway, just be patient with me while I try to get somebody out here to figure out why my Wi-Fi is suddenly so spotty. But okay, so I am Cassandra Faye Floyd, also known as Daughter of the Fates, founder of the Temple of Evolutionary Emergence, and I am back tonight with the fifth reading of this book that we are in. What's today? Wednesday. I think I'm gonna be victorious because we're more than halfway through the book. The book that I am referring to is the Sibyls, the first prophetesses of Mami Wata, the theft of African prophecy by the Catholic Church by Mama Zobe, for those that are tuning on via IG. And I have a preface today. I've been trying to stay away, from too many prefaces because I can go off. But today I think is an important one. Those of you who are a part of the Temple of Evolutionary Emergence group on hey Timazi. Those of you who are following the Temple of Evolutionary Emergence on the Facebook group, I actually put placed a video in the group yesterday that I felt like was important because this week is astrologically important and significant. And if any of you are like me, your ass is going through it. Okay? If any of you are like me on this here week, your ass is going through it. And the reason your ass is going through it is because of a few astrological occurrences this week. This week, Pluto, Mama Oya, stationed retrograde day for yesterday, Monday. Stationed retrograde, where she will be retrograde for several months. You feel me? Okay. This, not only that, I think in the South Node in Scorpio. Scorpio is in the South Node right now. So Pluto in the South Node or conjunct the South Node in retrograde while the South Node is in Scorpio. 1. 2, we have a Scorpio eclipse happening on Friday. So Pluto retrograde in the South Node that's in Scorpio while we have this Scorpio eclipse. This Scorpio eclipse coming for our ass. Coming for us on Friday. Okay? So all this time I've been telling y'all, be mindful of your dreams. Take heed to your dreams. Be diligent and just taking a few moments every morning when you get up. Jot down what you can remember from your dreams. They are big right now. They are impactful. This is also happening. This Pluto Scorpio shenanigans, as Tima put it, happening this week. It was still happening within the context that we are at the halfway point of Pluto's return in the United States natal chart. On top of the fact that Saturn just transitioned into Pisces for the first time in 30 years that we will be in till for 3 years. This is heavy shit. I watched in the video that I put in the Temple of Evolutionary Emergence group yesterday was this funny, wonderful astrologer that I like who was talking who was talking about the energy of this week, and especially with this Pluto Scorpio shit being just heavy and replete through the week. He was like, he said something to the effect of, he was like, we all as a global community have to get ready to be able to take turns holding each other's hair while we're vomiting all over the place. Because this shit is about to dredge up a lot of shit from the extreme bottom of our karmic barrel. And the energy of this week is purging, throwing up, vomiting, bleh, projectile vomiting, deep shit. So we all got to get comfortable with holding each other's hair while we take turns purging old shit. Deep, old shit. Not just our shit, not just karma that we have, karma or trauma that we've incurred in this incarnation, but ancestral karma, deep cultural, social karma, collective trauma. We got to get ready to purge all that shit out. I just love the analogy when he said we got to all get comfortable holding each other's hair in this period while we take turns throwing up all that old shit, all that shit that's coming to the surface, begging to be released. So I hope you got your big girl draws on, or your big boy draws on, because this week been crazy. You feel me? So that's the first preface I want to make. The other that is indirectly related to that is this book. I don't know if y'all just listening to me read, or if y'all are really taking a walk with me through this book. I repeat that. I do not know if you are just watching me read, listening to me read, or are you really walking with me through this book? Because I don't know about y'all. I told y'all this is the first time I'm reading the book straight through cover to cover. So when y'all mind get blown, my mind is getting blown at the same time. I've thumbed through the book. I made little notes and little shit I stopped on here and there, but to read the book from cover to cover straight through, my wig is perpetually being peeled back. You understand? And I'm gonna tell you, this book got me in my emotions. It's got me in my feelings. In a good way, but sometimes in a painful way. This book got me in my feels. And it's so funny. I don't even know why. What prompted me to take this week, because I had not been on my little studying, my astrological studying as heavy as I am typically in. I was like, I'm overwhelmed this week. My place looks a wreck because I'm trying to clear shit out of my storage. So before I can even empty, I just got stuff everywhere, child. And it looked like a lunatic living in this house. And so I'm like, oh my God, I got to get my place organized. So I've been really in my physical, overwhelmed, because I'm a Virgo with a Capricorn moon. I want to see my organizational, I want to see shit organized and have its own place. And so I don't know about most of y'all who are Virgos, but what'll happen is shit will become so chaotic that I have to be meticulous in slowly putting everything in its proper home. Right. And so I will stay in overwhelm for a while until the shit is executed exactly. That's that shit that we be on, right? That meticulous shit that we be on. And so that's what I've been like sitting in this week, was like, oh my God, my place. So much to the point that when I wake up, I'm like, I got to get that here. I'm just getting more stuff. That's happening. Right now, look. Ooh, this internet shit is pissing me off. I pay too much. My internet be having those. Okay. Yeah, I might have to, I don't know. Anyway, but we just gonna rock through this. But anyway, so in relationship to that, right? This astrological tomfoolery that is unfolding this week. Yeah. Still always trying to keep the daily um, context that this mystic, unbelievable, us to change the fucking world. So me trying not to get caught up in the daily and noise so much that it gets me off my square in the planning of the long view, which is this world that we want to create in real time, right? Was that clear? Me attempting, I want to thank everybody for tuning in, right? Me attempting to, right, keep in my immediate vision, consciousness, this necessity to execute all the time, to execute every day this vision that has been given to me, this task that I have accepted, right? To be mindful, even when I'm in my shit feeling overwhelmed, to say, okay, these are just the baby steps that you got to take to change the fucking world. Keep the shit in perspective. Yes, you overwhelmed in your apartment trying to get it cute and all this shit, and you're surrounded by all this stuff, and you need these coins and all this shit, all this busy, and you got bills and all this stuff. Still keeping the perspective, the world, the long view that is being created in the immediate moment. Okay? That's some heavy fucking shit, baby. That's some heavy shit. To not child, let me just tell you about Pluto, okay? Oh my God. Let me just tell you about Scorpio shit. Let me just tell you about this fucking week and how this week is about dredging up within each and every one of us that shit that we refuse to face so that we can face it, whether we do it willingly or whether we're bent over the cosmic toilet throwing our fucking karmic guts up. Shit. Ha! Y'all don't understand what is happening right now, okay? When I say in real time, has spirit be trying your motherfucking stilo? When I say in real time, how the universe has a fucking sense of humor that is sometimes not funny but brutal. Like when your ass is the butt of somebody else's joke, they laughing. It's funny to somebody, just not you. I'm trying to give y'all a word right now, okay? I don't understand this message you just sent me, T my eye. I don't understand it. I'm confused. I don't get it. But anyway, baby, when I tell you in real time, right this minute, you understand. Spirit got jokes. You really ready? Here, let's throw a curveball at you. You really ready? Let's throw a curveball at you. You really about that life? Let's throw a curveball at you. Oh, see, you dropped the ball, bitch. You ain't ready for that curveball. I'm trying to tell you in real time. Okay. Anyway. So, in the midst of all of these cosmic shenanigans, these, this astrological tomfoolery, I'm gonna say it. I went to Mexico today. I rode to Mexico early this morning, about 4:00 this morning. We got back late in the afternoon. It was really just a drive down there, get some shit done, turn around, road trip shit. And I'm gonna just tell you about life, baby. It's so wonderful. It is. And I'm gonna tell you what's wonderful about it. It is wonderful when you are able to see, to really, really see. It is amazing when you corral people, because that's what we do all the time. When you corral people into your life, when you corral people, when you cast an invisible net and reel into your existence as yourself in that moment, those that will affirm who you are in that moment of your life, and you can see in them, you can hear and feel in them every strength that you have, every vision that you have fulfilled in relationship with them, every weakness you have. Everyone in your life is representative of a strength you have, of a weakness you have, of a debt unpaid by you. You understand? Of a dream you have not yet fulfilled, but they represent a potential for the fulfillment of that dream. We wheel into our lives, we call into our existence every fucking person that is in it. I believe that shit. That's some hard shit to accept, because sometimes we will into our lives toxic people, but those toxic people that we will into our life are a direct representation of something not yet healed in us, not yet faced in us. They represent spirit as an avatar in your cipher saying, bitch, you know, you got to get right. There's still this little thing over here you have left unaddressed. Are you really sure you have the confidence and the audacity necessary to execute what the fuck you say you want to execute? The destiny you say that you came here to fulfill? Are you really ready? Do you have what it takes to do that right now? Well, let us remind you through this person that you have willed into your life that there's something still left unfaced and unaddressed in you, my dear. It's not a punishment. It is not a punishment. It's not a judgment. It is just what the fuck it is. And are you ready to face that shit? I used to say about my ex-husband, and I was incorrect. I used to say about my ex-husband that I had to go through with him what I went through because it was me having to pay some karmic debt. And I feel like I was incorrect in that statement. It wasn't a karmic debt that my ex-husband represented in my life. It wasn't a karmic debt that I had to pay. It was the apex presentation of every single flaw of my own represented in every single previous relationship that I had with men. I used to say this shit like, this dude is like the perfect collage of every relationship that I've had up until this moment. It wasn't a karmic debt that he was there, you know, to create havoc in my life and shit and cause hurt and shit in my life and shit. It was, again, a non-judgmental nudging of spirit saying, baby, there's still shit in your life left unfaced. There is still trauma in your past left unfaced, unhealed, unresolved. But I was so caught up in the rage. I was so caught up in the hurt of that relationship. I was so subdued by that which I experienced was the worst of that relationship that it took me years before I was able to say my ex-husband's name without an explicative attached to it in the front or in the end. You feel me? That I was able to see the blessing that came from that relationship, which was the final facing of those tendencies that I had been experiencing in previous relationships. And he represented the total collage of that. It needed to be that in order for me to receive the blessings that I got from that relationship. And I'll be honest, that motherfucker put me through hell. However, the blessings that I received as a consequence of that relationship far outshine and outweigh the trauma. They do. They do. But I had to detach from the emotional, visceral experience I was reliving in every moment. Years later, he ain't doing me no harm no more. He ain't traumatizing me no more, but I was still experiencing that shit in my fucking blood, in my fucking flesh and shit, because I wouldn't relinquish the trauma to extract and face that there was healing that came from that relationship. There was something that was a mystery to me that was made visible so that I could face it and release it. Plus, there was a breakthrough that came as a consequence of that relationship that couldn't have happened any other way, because I was not open to a conversation about spirit. I wasn't open to a conversation about ancestral veneration. I was not open to a conversation about the necessity of centering cultural and traditional cultural traditions, historical African traditions in a revolutionary life to mend what was broken in both. I couldn't have heard it had it not been communicated through an intimate, romantic love relationship. I wouldn't have heard it from anybody else but somebody that I was intimate with, that I was partnered with, that I loved, right? So I'm not on a tangent. I'm trying to preface, because in this Pluto energy that we are in and we will be in until November of 2024, and the noise that is being deliberately created in this world right now to keep us off our square. So people be talking, I want to tell y'all something. And I want to tell y'all this because I've been having this conversation a lot lately, and I think that it is my approach that triggers people. But I have been telling people, it happened even today, when they start talking about certain things, I'm like, I don't want to talk about that. And that might not be the right approach. You know what I'm saying? But I don't like the fact that everybody that knows me knows my heart, because I wear my shit on my sleeve. I feel like I have to. I want people to know that my intentions are always good. My intentions always lead to the same outcome all the time, no matter what scenario I am in. I want to change the fucking world. That's all I'm interested in. That's all I care about. That's all. The love that I have for my family is centered in this thing that I want to create for all of us, that I want to see the world whole. I want to see the world healed. I want to see the world well, all of us in it and on it. That's all I give a fuck about. Everything that I give a fuck about rests within the context of me knowing since I was a child that I am here to change the fucking world. We all are. So I don't want this to be perceived as no Messiah shit. It is not. We are all here to change the world. We all are. All 8 billion of us are here to change the world. The way that we receive our destiny may differ in 8 billion different ways. The speed with which we accept that mission may differ in 8 billion ways, but every goddamn single fucking one of us, from the most poor to the most wealthy, have a role to play in the way the future unveils itself. So my intentions are always centered in love. Always, 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 always. Right? And so this thing that we are in, whether we are willing participants in it or passive participators in it, whether it's dragging us along, kicking and screaming, or whether we are riding this bitch like a golden stallion, directing its every goddamn move, or being drugged by a string attached to the backside of the goddamn golden stallion, kicking and screaming. We are either on top of the bitch or being pulled behind the bitch, but the bitch is going in the direction of the future. And baby, this week in particular is asking us, are you really about that life? What are you here for? Why do you exist? Is your existence a benefit to the whole or a detriment to the whole? Do you give a fuck about the future? If so, what in your daily life is indicative of that? What in your life, in your behavior, in your actions demonstrate that you give a fuck about the world, that you give a fuck about your community, that you give a fuck about anything except occupying time and space in the moment, breathing air and consuming in every moment? I'll tell you, I got an attitude this week. I'm in a great mood. I am. This week has been kicking my ass. It has. But as much as it has been kicking my ass, is equally as much as it has been blessing me. It has. So even though, my energy is like rough, I'm happy. I'm always happy. But why? Because I'm always certain. I believe what the fuck I say, baby. You don't have to. I believe that the future is certain. I believe that the future is ours. I believe that everything in the universe is on our side. I believe that. I believe that, I'll tell you, I believe something that I have to work on before I articulate. But anyway, I'm just saying, I'm in a good mood. I'm just saying, be easy on yourself this week. Take care of yourself this week. Sit at the base of a tree this week. Breathe beautiful air this week. Make loves this week. Hold each other's hair while you puke up your past this week. You understand? Be gentle with one another. You understand? Don't mistreat human beings. Like, can we just not do that? That shit's so gross. Can we just not mistreat each other? Like, what would that look like? For everybody on the planet to just say, for one day, I'm not going to mistreat a single human being. I think we can take 24 hours off from all bullshit. We just ain't going to mistreat nobody for 24 hours and see what happens in the world. You understand? And if you don't feel confident that you can do that and be out in the world, stay your ass at home for 24 hours and just not mistreat people for 24 hours. Let's see what can happen. That's where power is. The power is ours, but we relegate it to others. We give it away. The power is ours, but we can't remember it, so we buy bullshit. The power is ours to instantly change everything, but we yield power to others. We give it away, right? We give it away through doing things like mistreating other human beings. We do that. Anyway, let me stop. I could go on, but yeah, I will say this last thing, and I'll probably say it at the end again as well. This weekend, which will be May 6th, I will be doing an official presentation, a service as the Temple of Evolutionary Emergence. I do not know, because I am not using the location that I was using before for reasons of integrity. So it may be that I just have people over, maybe not. I don't know. It might just be just like it is. Me sitting here in front of my relics and my altar, talking to you about whatever spirit has for you on this Saturday. But Saturday, May 6th, while we're still within the crest of the Scorpio eclipse, I'll be holding temple service at 11 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. And I will be broadcasting, if I have the ability. I'm not sure that I'll have the ability, but hopefully I'll have the setup available by then where I can broadcast, definitely through Streamline, definitely again through IG. But anyway. So this Saturday at 11 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, We will be doing the official, we'll go back to our original schedule, which is every first and third Saturday will be the services of the Temple of Evolutionary Emergence. And I'll just say for the time being, it'll be done here at my location until we can identify another location to do regular services. So that's all about that. So we'll go ahead for those that are tuning in late. This is me on the 5th reading of the Sibyls, the first prophetesses of Mami Wata, and the theft of African prophecy by the Catholic Church. As you can see, we're more than halfway through the book. My ambition, today is Wednesday, is to have this book finished by Friday. So we shall see. It might even be that I have to do 2 readings in a day. I want to be done with this by Friday. So for those who have been rocking with me the whole time, we're on page 80. And the title of this new chapter is The Final Destruction of the Sibyl Prophecies and the Dilemma of Rome and the Papal Church, baby. The Sibylline prophecies were rendered in the same exact poetic, symbolically rich language which was considered the trademark of the first Sibyl priestess, Phomonia. This style was used as a measure. I'm always taking notes while I'm reading to you guys, so. This style was used as a measure of authenticity of any prophetic document written during the pre-Christian era. However, after all was said and done, the warring patriarchal factions of the Levitical Hebrews and those of the budding Christian Papals began creating a flood. Girl, T-My, were we just not talking about this? These motherfuckers began creating a flood of confusion and contradictory forgeries, espousing their own brand of dogma and attributing them to the Sibyls. Girl, were we just not talking about this? In the Bible, there is a scripture that says the adversary is the author of all confusion. Okay? The adversary is the author of all confusion. Right? And then there's another scripture that says, my father is not the author of confusion. But right here, it says, yes, your father is the author of confusion because he is the adversary. God damn it. Anyway, it says here, however, after all was said and done, the warring patriarchal factions of the Levitical Hebrews and those of the budding Christian Papals began creating a flood of confusing and contradictory forgeries, espousing their own brand of dogma and attributing them to the Sibyls. Okay? This was the motivating impetus behind St. John, the alleged author of the book of Revelation, a prophetic text which many in the ancient world believe was actually authored by the Sibyl Hierophile Phomonia, when he makes the astounding threat that, quote, I solemnly swear, if anyone adds anything to what is written, God shall add to him the plagues written in this book, end quote, Revelation 22:16 through 19. A typical preemptive threat. A typical preemptive threat employed by the warring Christian and Jewish sects, both of whom were widely disseminating corrupted and altered Sibyl texts. One of the main issues of contention in establishing Levitical and Christian legitimacy was in changing the name Ixhausa, whom the Sibyls stated would be the next, quote, savior, and replacing it with that of either Jesus or Yahweh Jehovah. Y'all ain't heard. I'm about to upset many people in reading this book. I'm about to hurt many feelings in the reading of this book. I'm just trying to tell you. Right? Ixhausa appears to be an Afro-Chaldean or Chaldean name similar to Sixuthros and the Mami fish deity later known as Oanus. Higgins asserts that, quote, the pagan Sibyl prophecies being much clearer than those of the Jews, the Platonist philosophers annoyed because they clearly foretold a great person to come, and unless they allowed it to be Jesus Christ, they could make nothing of them, end quote. Another crucial factor which created a political and theological dilemma for both of these groups was that these prophecies spanning more than 4,000 years were inherently intended for the African nations and their clerics, where the major temples of the Black Goddess and the temples of Amun, stretching from Egypt, Israel, Turkey, Greece, and Rome, were addressed cyclically by her. The Sibyls were African and were the main oracle of the serpent worshipping tribes. Thus, their prophetic spirit was indeed an ancestral serpent who had issued forth these divine prophecies since the beginning of time. The church papals knew this, but had already condemned the serpent spirit as a manifestation of highest evil. What are you writing, T? I do not know what this is, girl. I don't know if you're doing it on purpose, but the way this stuff is coming through is weird. Face orange, frowning, face blue, wide eyes, face blue. I don't know. Oh. It must be you trying to do emojis, and it's typing out the literal words of the emojis. How weird, bizarre. But anyway. I'm going to reread that last paragraph because it's important. Child. The Sibyls were African and were the main oracle of the serpent worshipping tribes. Thus, their prophetic spirit was indeed an ancestral serpent who had issued forth these divine prophecies since the beginning of time. The church papals knew this, but had already condemned the serpent spirit as a manifestation of highest evil. That's why y'all hate Black women. That paragraph I just read in a nutshell explains why everybody on earth hates Black-skinned women. Right here. Rome reneges on promise to divine African mother. Meanwhile, as the Roman patricians remained busy expanding its empire and consolidating its power, the social, economic, and political climate began to change in Rome. The Roman Church had long ago removed itself from being simply an apostolic local center of power. It became more concerned with territory and acquiring wealth, and with gaining absolute control as an imperial world power. By the 6th century CE, patriarchal Africa, who had acquired much of its political and economic power by usurping the African matriarchs, and later through military expansion, had lost much of its economic and political predominance in the ancient world. Many of the African temple priests and priestesses, accustomed to expensive gifts, entertaining high dignitaries, and other such luxuries, succumbed to the complete corruption. The African clergy began opening the temples only certain days and charging exorbitant prices for ceremonies and sacrifices. Y'all ain't hearing. Oh my God. Y'all ain't hearing. Oh my God. Child. Listen, the African clergy began opening the temples only on certain days and charging exorbitant prices for ceremonies and sacrifices, making them accessible only to the elite. An entire crop of foreign impostors having purchased initiations to acquire economic clout and social status passed themselves off as authentic Sibyls, Bachides, and queres, or priests and diviners, creating fringe cults and bizarre systems of rituals and worship, where many of the sacred laws and taboos were being ignored or straight up violated. Oh my God. Y'all ain't hearing. Child. Y'all are not hearing. Okay? Lord, Lord, Lord. She said these motherfuckers came up in here, got themselves some quick initiations, and started creating their own little fringe cults and bizarre systems of worship and ritual where many of the sacred laws and taboos were being ignored and violated. You feel me? Additionally, a new generation of Caesars, Christians, and politicians nurtured on a racist diet of political and religious propaganda. Baby, she said they was well fed on the shit. Oh my God. Additionally, a new generation of Caesars, Christians, and politicians nurtured on a racist diet of political and religious propaganda born from Greek and Roman philosophers and theologians were espousing a new supremacist doctrine which entailed divorcing themselves from all foreign and especially African religious and cultural influences. This preaching that's happening right here for y'all. You feel me? Constantine the first Christian and pagan emperor, reigned as a priest of Sophia, Artemis, the Black Diana, claiming Black Hellenic matriarchal lineage. Constantine maintained the festivals of her, but fearing a resurgence of the old matriarchal divine orders, he outlawed on penalty of death all forms of divination, ancestral sacrifices, and festive ceremonies. He knew these sacerdotal functions could only be performed through lineage. African priestesses, which included the Sibyls, the Pythoness, and the Pythias, which would quickly usurp the authority of the new Roman papals, and they were therefore all outlawed. Broken promises. Sibyl goddess curses Rome. Okay? Constantine, who once tolerated for political reasons African and other religious traditions, also began a campaign of destroying all the African temples and shrines, especially in the Asian Minor. He finished off the final desecration at Delphi. He finished off the final desecration at Delphi by pillaging and carting off all of its art, books, and statuaries to adorn his new Christian temple at Constantinople in Turkey. Later, he and his Christian emissaries invaded, destroyed, and pillaged Carthage and the temple of Tanit. These deliberate acts of sacrilege negated a centuries-old promise made by the earlier Caesars to the Black goddess Diana, that Rome would never invade or destroy Carthage, nor to desecrate her people, nor to persecute her people. However, under the current Emperor Julian in 361 to 63 BC, Constantine's nephew, he tried to maintain this promise and attempted to restore many of the Black Diana's temples, but he only lived 2 years. The political process arguing the continued destruction and attempts to revive religious African customs and institutions throughout Rome and her colonial territory shuffled back and forth in the Roman Senate for decades. And then there's a picture of it says 400 CE, the Roman catacombs of a black Roman citizen carrying religious offering. The level of persecution was such that many of the devotees of the Sibyls and others suffered horribly under the imperial church in Rome. Most resorted to clandestine meetings in the underground catacombs to honor their African ancestors, deities, and martyrs. Determined to rid Rome and Europe of African matriarchal and spiritual dependency, Roman general Theodius, Theodius, I guess, the first, 376 CE, promptly confronted the Senate, who for 1,200 years kept their promise to the African mother. He demanded that they stop financial support of the African temples, to hold the festivals to the African goddesses and to other gods. The Senate responded that the African gods had blessed them immensely. Y'all, oh my God, y'all ain't hear it. That the African gods had blessed them immensely and that they would continue to bring money to the African priestesses for the usual sacrifices. God damn it. Oh my God. Woo. Anyway, the infamous Theodius responded that they should embrace Christianity, claiming that the Roman treasury had no further funds for making the annual sacrifices. Thus, the edict Religio Paganorum had been issued, classifying African-based traditions as heathenistic and pagan. In the year 451 CE, by pain of death, all forms of foreign and African religion were outlawed by a constitutional amendment under Emperor and cousin of Theodius, Valentinian III. General Stilicho, a Gaul German, by imperial decree, struck a major blow when he demolished the temple at Apollo. Okay. Ciao. The final death blow was delivered by Theodius and his sons during the reign of the Emperor Valentinian I, 321 to 75 CE. Now backed by the full support of the Roman Senate, Theodius, in a violent wave of delight and fury, began in Egypt, where he closed and destroyed all of the Isis Black Diana temples before turning his virulent rage against those remaining temples in Rome. Temple reports, quote, among the unspeakable crimes being referred to was the destruction by Bishop Theodius of the Great Library of Alexandria, because it contained heathen literature, which so often took place at the hands of a Christian bishop attempting to wipe out all traces of history before Christ, and not as a result of an accidental fire, as the story is usually told, end quote. Although throughout Africa especially, the Romans destroyed all of Mami's major temples and established monks and hermits, or they urinated and defecated in its ruins to make certain the Africans did not rebuild them. In their diabolical mayhem, they also destroyed the remaining Sibylline oracles anywhere that they found them, especially in Rome. More than 300 years after the death of Christ, Rome was now officially a Christian nation, and all forms of divination, ritual, and sacrifices were strictly prohibited. From that moment onwards, according to some accounts, Rome began to experience all forms of misfortunes. Because of these crimes and the promises not kept by Rome to the divine African mother, the African spirits were inconsolably grieved and angry. Africans and those who followed the old religious order were routinely denounced, ridiculed, persecuted, crucified, and rendered ignorant heathens. Subsequently, the Sibyls took great pleasures in forecasting the certain ruin of Rome. Oh my God. The peculiar dilemma of the imperial papacy. With the old African traditions well suppressed, the Roman papal still had one major problem. They could not get around the undeniable fact that the Sibyl prophecies were still the only legitimate authority of high and divine order, being exploited by both Roman and Hebrew sides to advance their own political agendas. According to Higgins, quote, these Sibyl prophecies have been equally troublesome to the Roman priests and the Roman and Greek philosophers. The divines would have been very glad the divines would have been very glad of them. But the adoption of them carried with it the shocking consequence that God must have had such a bad taste as to have preferred even the wicked Sibyl pagans to his own people, end quote. The papal authorities' problems were further complicated by the fact that most of the ritual remedies inherent and specific within the Sibyl prophecies require the traditional sacrificial appropriation of which the Sibyls and other African priests could legitimately perform. The arrogant Roman papacy found the idea of an animal sacrifice repulsive and had to either categorically reject the oracles entirely, discredit the Sibyls, or find a means to remove that specific requirement from the Sibyls' prophetic books completely. This ignorant and contemptuous attitude by them is reflected in the statement made by Bell. Quote, how much soever they, the Sibyls, might pretend to prophesy, they could not have it by divine inspiration, for most of the oracles, when consulted by the Romans, directed to the most idolatrous and abominable rites. Therefore, if they, the Sibyls, had the gift of prophecy, they must have received it from diabolical or evil spirits. End quote. Oh my God. Yo. The attempt to remove all references to animal sacrifice created a flood of forged documents from both the Jewish and Roman camps, both groups putting into the mouths of the Sibyls contradictory and absurd prophetic admonishments and arguments against, quote, idolatry. This causistic and convoluted propaganda worked in both of their interests. However, the Roman and Jewish clerics' rationale in justifying the continued use of the Black Sibyl prophecies was becoming more absurd and irrational by the minute. Consider the following, quote, because idolatry had been introduced in the world and the devil to confirm the false divinities found a great success in giving answers through idols, and in order that those who came to consult them should believe that these divinities were the true God. These answers were given in many temples of the idols, and the most remarkable ones were in Dodona, a province in Egypt, where, according to the Diodorus Siculus, in the depth of a wooded forest, there was a temple dedicated to Jupiter, another name for Amun, end quote. Theft, plagiarism, and other exploitations of the Sibyl prophecies. We are told that St. Augustine, the great doctor of the Christian church, employed corrupted and plagiarized prophecies of the Sibyls in his 22-book treatise on the city of God. Similarly, the Sibyls' fourth eclogue, considered to be a masterpiece of pagan prophecy, was massacred by the Roman poet Virgil in his so-called Oratio ad Sanctum Coatium. They were not alone. The list of writers who heavily quoted from these Black prophetesses included other church fathers who had formed a committee specifically to adulterate their sacred works. Included were Clemens Alexandrinus, Justin Martyr, Athenagoras, Theophilus of Antioch, Tertullian, Lactantius, Eusebius, St. Jerome, St. Austin, Antactus, and others, all of whom were hailed by the church fathers as a distinguished body of Sibyllists. And appointment to the board of Condecemviri was considered a very high honor. Their main objectives were in destroying their most threatening rivals, Judaism and African idolatry, and employing both Judaism and Sibyl prophecies in laying the eschatological, theological, and philosophical foundation of Christianity. The final destruction. As stated earlier, as long as African deities remained the divine and prophetic authority in Rome, the ecclesiastical and political power would remain in the hands of the African priestesses. This, along with the Roman patricians being unable to navigate around the many prophecies intended for the African pagan masses, frustrated Augustus. To begin the dismantling of the African gods' hold on Rome, he issued a decree to destroy the Sibylline oracles. He then proceeded to burn more than 2,000 of them and forbade by punishment of death the reading of the Sibylline books. He kept only those that could be altered or that addressed the ultimate fate of Rome. These actions followed years of persecution, discrimination, and social ostracism. Reminiscent of modern-day politicians, each successive emperor promising to restore the old African gods in order to garner political support, only to later renege on their promises. The Christians, centuries later, revised this story and proclaimed themselves as being the ones the ones persecuted. However, the evidence reveals otherwise. One case in point is when Roman Emperor Nero, 37 CE, after attempting to find some guidance in the Sibylline books that would calm the growing resentment and the disconnect of the persecuted African and Gentile masses, was hailed as a hero in the following praise song. Quote, "Hail, Olympian victor. Hail, Pythian victor. Augustus, Augustus. Hail, Nero, our Hercules. Hail, Nero, our Apollo, the only victor of the grand tour, the only one from the beginning of time. Augustus, Augustus, O divine voice, blessed are they that hear thee." End quote. It is obvious that these proclamations of gratitude and praise are not to Jesus, but rather to the lineage of the African ancestors and the Sibyls, including Augustus, who installed the Black Diana as promised to the goddess. And many of the African lore that flourished in the Asian Minor and throughout all Greece and Rome, the Black Egyptian Hercules would often be equated with Atlas or with Noah. The Pope declares age of apostles and prophecy over. All future African prophetesses and prophets labeled frauds and heretics. The Levitical Jews, just as the Muslim Arabs, both proclaim Abraham, whom was neither Arab nor Jew, as their divine ancestor. These Jews also claimed that their Hebrew prophets parallel those of the Sibyls. However, they do not answer why the Jews altered the prophecies of the Sibyls made from their Omphale temples in Palestine, just to assure the hegemony of their fire god, Yahweh Jehovah, over the Christian Jesus. They plagiarized and published, in particularly the Sibylline books 3, 4, and 5, and widely circulated their own corrupted versions of these sacred oracles in the name of Jehovah, baby. Okay. We are told by Higgins that the etymological root of Jehovah, liu, or like EU or Iye, had been deliberately disguised to conceal that it was an ancient praise word for Krishna, i.e. Jah. It is also the symbol atop the Omphale temple at Delphi, and whose image was found in the ancient temple ruins at Thebes. In other words, when this faction of Hebrews broke away from the divine African mother, they deliberately disguised their ancestral connection to her and to the Oannes, who have their ancient roots and actually in Ethiopian India. According to him, it was actually Krishna whom the Sibyls are said to come after Buddha as the next incarnation of the sun god. These Jews further altered the oracles and placed into the mouths of their own prophets, proclaiming themselves as the persecuted and the chosen people for whom the divine African mother, now changed to Yahweh Jehovah, was referencing. Roman theologian Tertullian 160 to 230 CE, it even admits that, quote, the Sibyl prophecies was ancienter than all the heathen learnings that told real events, and whose words you have put into the mouths of your prophets instead of the demons, end quote. By this time, African deities were, as a rule, referred to as Christianized, quote, demons, a Greek word actually meaning spirit or familiar. More profoundly, what is being implied in the above is an admission that the biblical books claimed to have been written by Hebrew prophets may have actually been the prophecies of the Sibyls all along. Over time, being aware of the monumental task and near impossibility of removing all traces of the Sibyls from written history, the Jews, in attempting to disguise the African pagan heathen origins of the Sibyls, delineated them as being of Persian Aryan descent and of the Zoroastrian order. Ooh. Oh. However, when one considers the philosophy of Zoroaster, a fiercely nationalistic and virulent misogynistic Iranian prophet who hated women and predicted that most were doomed to go to hell, one can appreciate the utter absurdity and recklessness of such a historical cover-up. Oh. My God. The Roman Church, in their ignorance and ambition, acquired and doctored the Jews' corrupted versions until one could hardly distinguish one forgery from another. Not wanting to acknowledge the prophecies as being forged to establish the foundation of Christianity, the Christian papacy forbade the reading of the Bible entirely. Y'all, goddamn, y'all ain't hearing. Oh. Listen. Not wanting to acknowledge the prophecies as being forged to establish the foundation of Christianity, the Christian papacy forbade the reading of the Bible entirely. Then, in an attempt at covering all their bases, they historically documented the most famous of these Sibyls as being white and virgin and saved and pure and Christ-inspired, their official justification being, quote, this agitation of the devils and the replies of the idols lasted until the coming of Christ our Lord, who brought the olive branch as a sign that the tempests of idolatry has passed away, end quote. Oh my God. Nonetheless, though the Jews and the Christians were feuding rivals, it was in both of their highest interests to suppress the prophetic power, influence, and worship of the divine African mother. As a final act of apostasy in their corrupted books, they both placed in the mouth of the Sibyls proclamations against idolatry, serpent worship, initiations, polytheism, divination, sacrifice, astrology, and astronomy. Oh my God. Y'all ain't hearing. Ooh. Baby. In other words, the Sibyls were now preaching against that very source of their own divine authority. Okay? Moreover, they were contradicting all of the tenets and ritualistic functions of African and Chaldean religions, for which neither the Jews nor the Roman Church possessed any ecclesiastical authority, esoteric power, nor favor with the African deities. The church fathers did not stop there. In their revisionist fervor to justify the abrupt absence of no future Sibyl prophecies since the death of Christ, these church fathers simply placed in the mouth of the Eutherian Sibyl the following proclamation, quote, "Why, O Lord, dost thou compel me to still foretell the future and not rather remove me from this earth to await the blessed day of thy coming?" Oh my God. Oh my God. Yo. In other words, it is now time to suppress any further prophetic renderings, for he, the Christ, has already come and gone, and it had already been written that he would rise again. It was also time for the church fathers to create a separate and entirely different mythos for their version of this Christ, albeit lifted whole cloth from the Egyptian mythos of Osiris. Evangelistic fever in search of the African heathens. 1 century later, with the Roman Church's power assured, the Apostle Paul, armed with their corrupted theology, wasted no time in using the Church's propaganda against the multiracial inhabitants of the Asian Minor and Greece, Corinth, Thessaly, Samos, and Lydia. However, many of their earlier evangelists had already been duly slaughtered wholesale by the people who knew the true history of their own gods. They also knew the Roman Church's prophetic books to be the corrupted forgeries of the original Sibyls, whose priestesshood, though suppressed, was still strong in remote villages. The Africans and others rejected wholesale the naive notion of a virgin birth and an only begotten son and an actual resurrection of the flesh, recognizing these as allegorical references to their traditional sacrificial ceremonies of the sacred kings. A deliberate, well-organized campaign began to discredit, to persecute, and to suppress any future utterances and divine powers or reactionary efforts on the part of the Sibyls and African priests who would not submit to the new church's doctrines. The church, in their convoluted attempt to have it both ways, monopolized, in their convoluted attempt to have it both ways, they monopolized the writings and the history of the Sibyls as white, but cursed them in public as witches and demons. Y'all ain't heard. Enslaved, persecuted priestess in Rome. So there is a picture here, a drawing here. I'll show it to you. And then I'll read what the caption is. Figure 18. Frightened Afro-Roman woman being sold into slavery against her will in the utmost humiliation. Her price and life history hangs around her neck. Western historical revisionists and Hollywood have done a superb job in convincing the world that Black Africa's predominance never existed outside of continental Africa. They have alleged that those Africans allowed in camera have always been slaves or servants to white people, Roman aristocracy, servants to white Roman aristocracy. However, just as ancient Greek history tells us that a Black matriarchal presence first existed before the Dorian Greek arrival, the same holds true for Rome. Africans, Black Buddhist Umbrians, and Black Etruscans, etc., erected civilizations in what is now Italy, thousands of years before the Anglo-Romans arrived. What is now called the seat of the Vatican in Italy was originally the sacerdotal seat of the ancient Black Sibyls. It was their thrones and sacerdotal power and prophecies that was stolen from them, and their religions labeled as pagan and heathen under a racialistic Roman Church. It was this African traditional religionist groups and not the so-called Christians who were the actual ones persecuted and finally enslaved as the above African woman who was probably a priestess. African sacerdotal authority and totemic traditions undermined and demonized under Euro-Christendom. For example, the Cumaean Sibyl Hierophile, once worshipped and hailed by the Romans as a divine goddess, is now rewarded with a place in the Old Testament as the Bat Lady or the Witch of Endor. Samuel 1:28. The Divine Mother. Child, look. See my eye? I don't know if you still on, but we talked about this today too. So it says, for example, Cumaean Sibyl Hierophile was once worshipped and hailed by the Romans as a divine goddess, is now rewarded with a place in the Old Testament as the Bat Lady or the Witch of Endor, Samuel 1:28. The Divine Mother, now, listen, now masculinized as the Father, was angered by his chasing the Sibyls, Pythoness, out of the city. The spirits refused to answer him by his own oracles, nor by dreams, nor by Urim, which is a Hebrew divination of throwing the knuckle bones of a ram as dice, nor by their Hebrew prophets. The church papals were not finished because they now attributed all divine, prophetic, and healing powers only to Christ. Ciao. Hierophile, being emblematic of the entire African religious tradition, was now demonized. In exposing the hypocrisy and sentiment of the church, he sums it up. He sums it up in the following terms, quote, the first and most illustrious of witches, ancestor, mother, model, prototype, and flawless exemplar of all medieval witches, that venerable Pythoness, the Witch of Endor, was a necromancer. Her special mastership lay in enforcing the appearance of the dead. We see in the fact that she had no difficulty in making the prophet Samuel come out of his tomb. Power or no, he could not escape the dark power of that diabolical woman. Woo, child. Anyway. Day of Doom. Final prophecy for Rome. Baby. In the end, none of Rome's heroic efforts could stave off the inevitable fate of its impending destruction. In a desperate attempt to prevent the inevitable, the papal imperials searched desperately for the unfulfilled prophecies of the Sibyls. Of the prophecy of the Sibyls concerning Rome's final fate. Scrambling aimlessly through the Sibylline oracles, which had by now undergone a total masculinization and Christianization of God, they tripped and stumbled upon a few verses revealing that the die had already been cast. The divine African mother, who now delighted in prophesying their destruction in her final words, had only this to say. Oh, quote, thrice 300 years having run their course of fulfillment, Rome, by the strife her people shall perish. Rome is doomed to perish, and that indeed by the judgment of God, because it held her name in hatred. And being the enemy of righteousness, it destroyed the people who kept the truth. There shall come to thee sometime from above a heavenly stroke deserved, O haughty Rome, and thou shalt be the first to bend thy neck and be razed to the ground, and thee shall fire, destructive, utterly consumed, cast down upon thy pavements, and thy wealth shall perish, and wolves and foxes dwell in thy foundations, and then shalt thou be wholly desolate, as if never born. Oh. Child, I'm gonna need a minute. Did y'all hear what I just read, y'all? Okay. The final fall and dispersion. What is this you talking about? I have to read, T my Aunt Z. You said she references Samuel. What, in the book of Samuel in the Bible? Is that what you're saying? Like I have to read Samuel? T my Aunt. Okay, I'm just writing down what you said. Maybe we can talk about it later. Okay, the fall and dispersion. In the years following, specifically between 150 CE and 475 CE, Rome's population had increased, burdened by heavy bureaucracy, and their patricians became lazy and their bellies filled with the spoils of their colonial wealth. Its citizens were further weakened by numerous civil wars and devastating plagues. Rome was prime for the barbarian Germanic invasions, the Huns and the Gauls from the north, to which they eventually succumbed. The official cause of the young empire's collapse was just simply an overburdened bureaucracy, moral decay, and political corruption. However, beneath the substratum lies the story of the Sibyls, the African gods, and the destiny of a forgotten people. What became of the Sibyls? In a final effort to blot out all traces of the ancient African matriarchs and later the patriarchs' undeniable presence and influence in the ancient world, one of the most egregious historical lies disseminated by the imperial church in Rome and continued unchallenged by present-day Western historians is their unproved claim that all of the descendants of the Black Egyptian, Phrygians, Pelasgians, Phoenicians, Canaanites, and Syrians, including their culture, religion, and their languages, are now completely extinct. Western historians erroneously assert that these major African clans left no remote traces of themselves, neither in Africa nor anywhere else in the world. These holy papal fathers further designated the above ethnic classifications to the present-day occupants of Egypt, Greece, Turkey, and Syria, respectively, misleading the entire world to believe that they are the actual descendants of the original indigenous African and Afro-Elamite groups whose powerful empires once ruled the ancient world. Baby, one might well conjecture that the Africans, from all indications during their persecution in Rome, may have already begun their sporadic migration south, westerly back into Africa, decades before the final fall of Rome. However, what is certain is that as soon as they returned, they began empire building in West Africa, albeit employing the current oppressive patriarchal model so often mistaken by cultural anthropologists as Africa's original indigenous culture. Oh, shit. Did you hear? Did you hear? Did you hear? Did you hear what I just said? T my eye. Obasi, Topanga, Colada. Did you hear what I just said? Those tuning in through IG, did you hear what I just said? Y'all didn't hear what I just said. Y'all didn't hear what I just said. Listen. They say, one might well conjecture that the Africans, from all indications during their persecution in Rome, may have already begun their sporadic migration south, westerly back into Africa, decades before Rome's final fall. However, what is certain is that as soon as they returned, they began empire building in West Africa, albeit employing the current oppressive patriarchal model so often mistaken by cultural anthropologists as Africa's original indigenous culture. Many Africans until today have have no inkling that all of Africa was once ruled by their beloved matriarchs. God damn it. Listen. We don't even remember, because we think what we seeing as, quote, African cultural tradition that needs to be protected and preserved is the original African culture and tradition. Anyway, the Roman Church and its imperialistic designs plotted to control all of the African continent. This hostile climate, aided by the church's financial backing, helped to create an atmosphere for chattel slavery and the ultimate colonization of all of Africa in the New World. That's the coup d'etat right there. Though they were not alone in their determination to wipe out all traces of Africa's powerful religions, one of the first orders of the Christian missionaries commissioned by the church was the complete and absolute destruction of Africa's temples, deities, and shrines, as well as the total desecrating of Africa's priestesshoods and knowledgeable elders, and the systematic removal of all African women from their sacerdotal roles. Further, the perpetual povertization of Africa created the perfect climate to impose an inferior and fictitious brand of Christianity, such as what exists today throughout the continent. African and diaspora families, often bitterly divided between those who honor the old gods and customs established by their ancient mothers and fathers, and those who worship the colonial religion of Christianity introduced by the emissaries of the papal authorities. Okay? I'm just writing down notes of what my homegirl, T.My.I. is putting down. Listen, what did I just sit here in tears telling y'all about 2 days ago? 2 days ago, I sat here crying my little eyes out about how I know once I take full hold of the reins of my destiny, that I am certain of it, that it will be the thing that has my family sever ties with me. I'm convinced. I'm sure of it. I'm certain of it. Here is reaffirming what I just cried tears to y'all about the other day, was coming through to me in dreams. They had me call my sister first thing in the morning before my feet hit the ground. This is what's coming through in dreams. You have to be ready. You have to be prepared. Those that you love the most, those that you care about the most, may very well sever all ties with you when you do what you're supposed to do. Here it's saying right here. Further, the perpetual povertization of Africa created the perfect climate to impose an inferior and fictitious brand of Christianity, such as what exists today throughout the continent and throughout the diaspora. African and diasporic families, often bitterly divided between those who honor the old gods and customs established by their ancient mothers and fathers, and those who worship the colonial religion of Christianity introduced to them by the emissaries of the Papal Church, the Papal authorities. Baby. The church's persecution, child, look. And what did they use as the fuel to do that? The fear of death. I just had this conversation with this sister yesterday about this movie I wanted her to watch. It's a kid's movie. And so we was talking about, I said, watch the movie, we gonna talk about it, right? The movie is a kid's movie called The Last Mimsy. I watched The Last Mimsy again to be prepared to talk with this sister about the movie. I sat there bawling tears, crying big old crocodile tears. And so we're going through the movie and we're talking about how there's a point where the mother, it's like you're angry with her behavior, but you're conflicted because you know where it comes from if you're watching, right? Like when her children listen to me. When her children start to display power, her immediate response to power in her children was fear and then rage, right? And so her kids, being innocent and shit, are like, look, I have power. I can do this. I can do that. And in her, it wasn't, listen, this is the conditioning and how deep it is. Her response was the toys that gave her children these magical abilities was to throw the toys away. She picked up all the magical toys and threw them in the garbage and was screaming, no, give me the toys. You can't have them. They got to get out of my house, right? And she's like, damn, why she won't let the babies have this power? But then as a woman who is also a mother, I was like, oh, I know exactly why she is scared of power in her children. Because her DNA, her cellular memory reminds her that power means certain death. To display power in this society, in this world, means certain death. She was violent in taking away power from her children because she was trying to protect her children from something that her ancient memory reminded her of. For your babies to have power means from death. That's how deep that shit is. Child, look. Anyway, the church's persecution did not stop there. Centuries later, backed by the church's blessings and money, millions of Africans were unwillingly transported across the great oceans and enslaved to lay the economic and cultural foundation of the new Rome. In the Americas. The new Rome in the Americas. An untold number of Africans in the New World are the blood descent. Listen. Oh, listen. An untold number of Africans in the New World are the blood descendants of those ancient serpent worshiping matrilineal descendants, long ago scattered throughout all four corners of the world during the transatlantic voyages. In the New World, the demonization of both African presence and their religion still continues unabated. Today, few continental Africans or those in the diaspora hardly make the historical connection between the current status of African women and their ancient religions. Y'all ain't heard. While y'all out here spitting venom on the name of African women, while y'all are out here openly shouting from the mountains your disdain and hatred for Black femininity, both having been relegated to inferior status and a low economic cultural priority by its fiercely patriarchal government. Not to mention that only one country in all of Africa, Benin, actually recognizes the ancient religion, Voodoo, established first by the ancient mothers, see chapter 9, as its country's national religion. The Dogon, Ewe, Akan, and Mosai, the Akan, Masai, and Mendes are other African clans whom trace their ancient ancestral roots back to the ancient Nubia, Egypt, Ethiopia, and other ancient locations, still possess the knowledge of the sacred rites of which the church has never been successful at completely eradicating. In West Africa, the priestesshoods of the Sibyls, now known as Mami Isis, and Mama Isis, priestess of Isis, and those of the Amengenses calling the dead, still continue unabated within their serpent-worshipping Sibs of the Yeve Voodoo and elsewhere. Unfulfilled prophecy in the West. Unfulfilled prophecy in the West. According to St. Augustine, it was Rome to whom the Sibyls referred as the true whore of Babylon. All right. According to St. Augustine, it was Rome to whom the Sibyls referred to as the true whore of Babylon. In one final prophecy believed yet to be fulfilled by the Sibyls. In one final prophecy believed yet to be fulfilled, the Sibyls declares, quote, "A great mischief shall befall Europe from the breed of Saturn and the offspring of a spurious servant, and they shall conquer strong Babylon, and when of all the countries which the sun shines on, she has been called queen, she shall be destroyed by extraordinary ruin, and shall not give laws to her wandering posterity, offspring," end quote. Considering today's political climate, one could speculate much from this and not render too far off target. However, what is most important here for the African diaspora as the benefactor of the divine seed of their gods and ancestors is that whatever belies the fate of the world, in spite of how Western biblical prophecy has been perverted and corrupted to disguise or exclude African people and others, it is important for them to reconnect back with their own divine self with the utmost expediency. By removing the antiquated shackles of mental slavery, the accompanying psychological fear and ignorance, only then will they begin the important work of restoring the dignity and the respect for their African spirits and ancestors that are cosmo and biogenetically linked to them. Accomplishing this could prove not only beneficial to the world at large, but also might be the greatest cultural, political, and spiritual triumph of all time. Ooh, shall, quote, "And every land shall be filled up with thee, Africans, and every sea and every one shall be offended with thy customs." This is a quote by the Sibyl of Cumea. Oh shit, is this it? Child? Oh, I was about to say. Okay, so at the end of that chapter, I was like, hell no. There are a bunch of notes at the end of that chapter. The image of the Sibyls. Oh, I guess that child. Y'all ain't gonna believe this. That is the end of the book. Let me tell you. So this is what's left, right? But all of this is like pictures with like captions, notes, the appendices, but the way it's written is just very interesting, I will say. So I'm gonna read some of these. Black Chaldeans, world's first master astronomers. Quote, "I admit with great difficulty the theory of all early astronomical knowledge of the Chaldees having been acquired or invented by this race, and that the Chaldees were originally Negroes. But this prejudice wears away when I go to the precursors of the Brahms, the Buddhists, and when I reflect upon the skill in the fine arts which they must have possessed when they executed the beautiful and most ancient sculptures in the museums of the India House, and the knowledge of astronomy shown in their cycles of stones." That is by Higgins, Anacopoulos, Volume 1, page 364. And then there is an image associated with these captions. And the image is of a Black Chaldean priest who above is an astronomical chart reflecting the microcosm and celestial worlds. The Black Egyptian pyramid surrounded by the holy nimbus or halo at the top is actually based on an ancient cone pillar, Womb Omphe, one of the primeval symbols of Isis and the Black Diana. One of the above names, Epiphania, describes one of the oldest settlements of the Black matriarchal Chaldean Canaanite clans in ancient Syria. Originally named Landos by them, they had occupied it since prehistoric times, including during the Hatti Empire, which they founded. In the 9th century, they were invaded by the Assyrians, and many fled to the Asian Minor, now Turkey, and founded a settlement bearing the same name located near the ancient Ethiopian Mitanni Empire. The name Epiphania was later given to the province by Seleucid, one of Alexander the Great's generals, who defeated the Assyrians and became the king of the region after Alexander's death in 323 BCE. Epiphania also appears in a corruption. Epiphania also appears to be a corruption of epiphany, an ancient word later borrowed by the Christians, but originally meant to describe the ceremonial night vigils held by the masses to witness the literal spirit manifestation of the black goddesses and gods, especially Isis, Osiris, Ceres, and the Black Diana. African divine history hidden and obscured in time. During ancient times, it was the Chaldean priests who manifested materially and mystically the desires of the African gods. They came originally out of ancient Egypt, Nubia, Ethiopia, Syria, Persia, and made their own way into Ionia, Asian Minor, and India. Initiated into the mysteries of Mami and the Dionysus, Bacchus, Osiris orders, these African men were master astronomers, astrologers, prophets, alchemists, magi, and the masons, architectural engineers. Just as the Sibyls, these priests were the early inventors and masters of nearly all forms of divination, including augury, messenger by birds, and ventriloquism, tarot, cards, bones, dice, etc. These master priests prepared the solar calendars and were the interpreters, of dreams and visions in the royal courts of kings. The Ethiopian prophet Abram, who was neither Arab nor Jew, was head of the Chaldean order of the diviners, just as his father, who made his living constructing votive images of Kore, Black Diana, once was. The Chaldean priest, meaning moon mother, honored the divine African mother and worked together with the Sibyls in establishing the ancestral shrines Omphale throughout the ancient world. Most of the original architectural designs in Macedonia, Ionia, and the Aegean Islands attributed to the Greeks were actually built by these priests and the Chaldai Black Amazons, or Chaldai Black Amazons. Once those temples were destroyed, the Greeks and later the Romans simply rebuilt them, copying the same architectural designs, but anglicizing the sacral images of the gods and goddesses within. As master mathematicians, the Chaldeans were the primary forecasters and validators of astronomical events and the divine cycles relating to prophecy as foretold by the Sibyls. In ancient Egypt, their most oldest predecessors were known as the Ketui, Ewe Kedas, or stone builders, who were later called the Morians by the European bards, because they were jet black like the smoked quartz, which bears their same name. However, the name is also a term used for calculating and predicting the motions of spaceships and other heavenly bodies. Oh my God. Shall listen, because the European bards, minstrel poets, who would often buffoon them in blackface, who would often buffoon them in blackface, also knew them and the Amazons to be the actual builders of the ancient Buddhist megastructures known as Stonehenge. It was believed to have been an observatory location for monitoring certain celestial events. During those times, as the above Roman chart indicates, it was common knowledge that the ancient Chaldean priests were originally African, as initiates of the goddesses and of fate and destiny, equal to their contemporary Gabadu in the Mami Voodoo Afa system of divination. It was through their permission, upon entering into their mysteries, that the ancient Chaldean diviners received their divinatory and magical powers. And then there's an image of ancient Akkadians or Akans of Babylon. That's all the bulls here. And below that picture, it says, a forester's recreation based on archaeological evidence of ceremonial sacrifices at the king's grave in ancient Ur or Babylon. Black Akkadians, Akkad meaning serpent worshippers, covered in sacred white kaolin, the color of death and spirit. It is from these ancient groups that the Chaldean Sibyl descends. It is also from these groups where the main manufacturing of the sacred heavily ornamented veil draped across the holy images of Isis and the Black Diana of Ephesus was constructed. Then there are other images there, right? I might have to end my my IG live. Anyway, I'm going to end this period in a minute. Okay, so these images that I just showed you are images in the British Museum. One is of the Sibyl Queen Mother, triple crowned as the Black Diana. She was worshipped as a triple-headed Janus in Rome, the double-coiled scarf representing the twin serpents of Mami. Another image says Sibyl priestess on Moor's coat of arms. No military leader would conduct tactical operations without first consulting a Sibyl and making the necessary propitiations to Mami and the ancestors. Long before the use of European saints, images of Mami or a Sibyl was worn on coat of arms or hung outside the businesses for protection and good luck. The last picture, Sibyl Queen on Moorish coat of arms, wearing a six-pointed crown of Mami Tanit. All African queens were Sibyls, but not all Sibyls were queens or prophetesses. So there's more images. There's an image of a Roman woman posing as the Ethiopian Phrygian Sibyl on the tomb of the Pope Hadrian IV of Rome, 1524. So I'll show you the image and then I'll read what's under there. So it's a white Roman posing as the Egyptian Sibyl. The Ethiopian Sibyl. So above, Roman model posing as Black Ethiopian Phrygian Sibyl on the tomb of Pope Hadrian IV, 117 to 138 CE, claimed to be the last of the non-Italian popes before John Paul II. It was Hadrian, a Black Phrygian from Thrace, now northeast Greece, who set the literary, cultural, and religious style of Rome during that period of time. It was considered fashionable for popes, emperors, patricians, and dignitaries to claim an African divine maternal lineage from the serpent spirit and the Phrygian Sibyl, Phrygia. Phrygia exemplified this. It was even believed that Hadrian, Augustus, and all 12 Caesars adopted their names and calculated their reigns based upon Sibyl prophecies. Oh, shit. They believed that Nero's would be the period in which the Messiah would come. So committed was Pope Hadrian that as emperor, he sent a tutelary African ancestral serpent to be worshipped, to be ceremonially placed in the temple of Jupiter. Hadrian later wrote to a friend, quote, "Those who worship Serapis, auricular ancestral serpent, or are also Christians. Even those who style themselves the bishops of Christ are devoted to Serapis." End quote. It was especially during Hadrian's reign that the divine Serapis was worshipped, sitting in full implements and regalia on his throne, with Isis standing next to him, holding her sacred sistrum in one hand and a sheath of wheat in the other. Beneath them read the inscription, "Immaculate is Our Lady Isis," which of course was later attributed to the new image of her made over as the White Virgin Mary. Though modern Western history has tried to conceal or deny an African world predominance in ancient Greece and Rome, the trail of African deities and their specific and unique bioancestral characteristics reveals another story. African and Afro-Phrygian, Afro-Judaic, Ophites, Ophis, Cushite, African Pelagians, Afro-Byzantium, Afro-Etruscan, Afro-Umbrian, and Afro-Grecan religions and culture was already dominant in Italy long before the formation of the Roman Empire. However, white models became commonplace under Imperial Rome when the church had fully formulated a European religious and racial identity. During the classical, revisionist era, they began to commission artists to replace the Sibyls, the Black Madonnas, and other African goddesses, thus implying a European antiquity that simply did not exist. It is these deliberate misrepresentations that have been passed down to the world today as world history. All right, so I think that is where I am going to close out for the evening. There's still a lot more in this book, but I think that was the official end of the book because everything else is, like I said, it's like images with that are really important, obviously, but images with like captions at the bottom. So I will go through those, you understand? But that's the end of the book, the official end of the book. And the rest is like notes and captions for images and stuff like that. Yep. So it looks like we, let's see. Yeah. So yeah, that's it. There's more that I can read. So I'll finish out that tomorrow. So that'll be it. Thursday will be the last day. So that little bit right there with the captions that I feel like are important, we'll go through, and then we'll go through the one little section on about the author because I think that's important because she did this. And for those who need a reminder, Mama Zogbe, who is the author of this book, has several interviews that you can actually listen to on YouTube. So just put in the search engine in YouTube, Mama Zogbe, Zogbe. There you go. That's it for me. Thank you so much for tuning in. Thanks so much for walking through me with this read. We'll finish up those little captions on the pictures tomorrow night to say that it is done. And after that, it is done. And then we have to debate about what next book we're going to read. Now, I'll be honest, I've been all over the place about what I want to read next because everything is good. This is one that I considered. It's a little heady, but I really feel like it's profoundly relevant right now. It's called The Biology of Belief by Bruce Lipton. And then the subtitle is Unleashing the Power of Consciousness, Matter, and Miracles. This book is the truth. You understand? It is some game-changing shit. However, I also have my nose in a book that I just read or started reading. I bought right before I went to Alabama to work with my mom. And this is called Code Cracker. The it's called Code Cracker Presents the Metaphysical Blueprint to Decoding Hollywood's Evil Genius. That is pretty gangster. Pretty good. Ooh. And then also, this one is very interesting. I'm probably not going to read this online, but I would encourage people to buy it. My disclaimer is this. The book is written by a medical doctor who is also a Christian minister. Okay. I like the book because I like how he takes Western medical and scientific studies and uses the Bible. He uses Western medical and scientific studies to demonstrate how our emotions biologically and pathologically pathogenetically become disease in the flesh. How our emotions, the chemical biological process for how the emotions become physical diseases. And he uses, after he cites studies and stuff like that, then he takes and uses biblical scripture to address those particular emotions, right? So let me just. Okay, so like, for example, he's got a section in here called Laughter is Good Medicine. So we'll talk about like Loma Linda University Medical Center has written about the health and healing benefits of laughter, blase blah, blase blah. And then after he makes the scientific point, he'll go to the scriptures that validate the scientific, reasoning behind our emotions and them being linked to our health and wellness. This is a good book. Like, you have to wade through the Christian shit, but if you can wade through it in a way that's objective, this gives you the ability, which is why I took it home, gives you the ability to communicate with your people in a language they can understand. You understand? I ain't got no beef with Christians at all. My beef is with Christianity. I still need to be able to use the language that people can understand to see how they can help themselves. And this book, to me, it really eloquently does that. You understand? To me, it does. So anyway, this is one that I would tell everybody to get. So this is Deadly Emotions by Don Colbert, MD. Deadly Emotions, understanding the mind-body-spirit connection that can heal or destroy you. That's the subtext. So I would encourage everybody to get that. It's actually a very good read. You can see it's well, highlighted and shit in my possession. And then I wanted possibly to revisit an oldie but goodie that I think might be timely. The Alchemist by Paulo Coelho. I think that's how you pronounce his name. I might be slaughtering it. But anyway, I was thinking about reading this to y'all next because we need some inspiration. To me, this book was inspiring. I loved it. I read it probably in 2 or 3 days the first time I read it. And so that might be the one I read next. A lot of the stuff I read to y'all is pretty deep, heady, philosophical, heavy and shit. This might be the inspiring book that we need. I love The Alchemist. How many people have read The Alchemist? Show of hands. You just read it again, Abasi? All right, that's what's up. Right? This book is the jam. So I don't know, but y'all can offer suggestions about what I need to read next. But yeah, tomorrow we're going to be done with this book, the Sibyls. So we got to find something else. And meanwhile, I am going to organize my life. So anyway, thank you so much for tuning in. Thank you so much for staying. I will see you tomorrow again at 8 p.m. where we finish the read of the Sibyls, the first prophetesses of Mami Wata and the theft of African prophecy by the Catholic Church. This is the only book I have by Mama Zogbe right now. My ambition is to acquire them all very soon. If anybody wants to contribute one of those books to me, if somebody want to buy the book for me, you understand, I will accept it. Go into my Amazon account and look at my books wish list, and you are welcome to purchase it for me. I will accept that. You feel me? But in the meantime, that is all. I am Cassandra Faye Floyd, also known as the Daughter of the Fates, and I am the founder of the Temple of Evolutionary Emergence. I will see you again tomorrow. Thanks for sticking out with me, and good night. Have a good night. Do what you do.